While the president avoided making any direct comments about the investigation itself that the DOJ is undertaking, the timing has raised a bit of concern. His remarks could influence what the DOJ does in some way. Ford O'Connell is chairman of the Civic Forum PAC and former outreach director for John McCain's presidential campaign. Julian Epstein is a former chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee, former staff director for the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Gentlemen, welcome to you.
Good morning, Jamie.
Interesting choice, Julian, and an opportunity to speak to you about this in particular, because in the inner workings of the DOJ as they undertake this investigation, I noted that the president said he hopes that the nation will have realistic expectations about what they will do. What is their obligation in terms of looking at this particular case, and what do you think the future of Stand Your Ground might be?
Well, I think it's, first of all, important to separate the president's comments, which I think were very constructive and helpful and cathartic, and the second question about whether the Department of Justice will now get involved. To the president's point, there aren't other things that we ought to be looking at, like Stand Your Ground laws, and like what I would argue are the most permissive gun laws in the country that create a bloodbath on American streets, where you have 11,000 Americans killed, murdered on the streets of America every single year.
Ford, the president didn't mention gun laws in this particular speech, and certainly it's easier in some states like Florida to get a concealed permit, which George Zimmerman had, than in others. New York, virtually impossible. But sticking to the issue of race, there definitely does, don't you think, need to be a discussion in this country about discrimination in general. But this particular case, most legal scholars would say, did not involve race. So the president injected and raised the discussion. We had peaceful protests for the most part, which is fantastic, that no one was hurt and the violence didn't erupt. But what is the impact for him of having taken that step to the podium unannounced and given these comments relative to Trayvon Martin?
Well, I give the president kudos for injecting himself, but I do think he really is contributing to the unrealistic expectation that the Department of Justice should bring a civil rights case against Zimmerman. And I'm glad Julian basically separated the law from someone's opinion, because my problem, seriously, is that most people don't know the law. They don't know what legal justice is, and essentially they equate and conflate fairness and morality with what they perceive the law to be. And if President Obama really wants to take the lead here, we have to be honest. Prejudice and inequality exists in America. The question is, can white America do more? Can we all do more? Can black America do more? And hopefully we can actually, lead to a real discussion on this, not just having people go along their way, whether it's black America or white America, saying, hey, this is injustice. Frankly, the Zimmerman verdict was not legal injustice. It was actually the right verdict given the evidence. Now, if there's new evidence, maybe the DOJ should bring a case.
So what do you think, Julian?
If I could just respond to that quickly.
Sure.
So I appreciate the sentiment that Ford is articulating. I take issue with two things. I take issue with the setup, your question to him, in which you suggested it's the president who is injecting race into the discussion. I think anybody that was watching this Trayvon Martin case understood that race was a big, maybe the major issue that was going on, in addition to the evidence. So I don't think the president
Julian, hold on one second. True, I agree with you, but not everyone is the president of the United States, and not everyone is a Harvard-trained legal, lawyer. And as such, he has to recognize that not only as a black American, as the president, and as a lawyer, he has to know how his comments can be perceived, because we all know that most of America works on perception, not reality.
So I was going to address that second part, if I may.
Julian, let me ask you this. The president gave credit for the judge running a fair trial, the jury doing their job based on the evidence, and the jury instructions being correct. He knows how it works, and the system, he said, worked. Whether race had anything to do with the case, it wasn't an element of the crime, it wasn't an element of the result, but it was an element, a big one, of his speech. Did he have the impact of bringing our nation together so that things may change, not just for African Americans, but for anyone that's being discriminated against? It seems that may have been what he was hoping to accomplish, or was he trying to influence the DOJ? Julian?
Okay, well, there's a lot to chew off there. First of all, while it wasn't an element of the jury instructions for sure, or necessary an explicit element of the evidence, it certainly was a major element in the case, according to nearly anybody on both sides that was watching this. Certainly the issue about African American men, the extent to which they're profiled when they're walking in their own neighborhoods. That is a major issue.
Now,
I think
found
the president.
Julian, hold on.
Can I finish the point without being interrupted? So I think the idea that the president is interjecting race here is foolish. It's just wrong. It is a major issue. I think to Ford's point about whether the president is raising expectations about DOJ action, I didn't see anything in his remarks.
He's got the bully pulpit, Julian.
Ford, if I can just finish the point, I think that's
hold on,
wrong
Julian,
as well.
for 1 second.
Julian, hold on.
Julian, I listened very carefully to this. I've even read the transcript. Ford, the president said that if the races were reversed for the most part, the outcome might have been different.
I think what he said was...
No, wait, this is my turn, Julian. Jamie is absolutely right. What Jamie is saying there is if the roles were been reversed, could Martin have stood his ground, legally speaking? And let me tell you, the president left that up to doubt. Might. But still, that is still that doubt in the minds of most Americans. And most Americans don't know the law. In a lot of ways, he is stoking the possibility that the DOJ should bring charges. Now, the question is how everyone is going to take this. All three of us up here are lawyers, and we all know that most people don't know the law. In their opinion, what the law is what they perceive legal justice to be, and that varies from everyone. So let's be honest here.
So
in some ways, the president made a powerful statement,
guys. You know
but
how
he's
this
stoking the
works.
fires
I'm up
here.
against a break. Ford, stand your ground was an option for the defense. They did not take. They didn't raise it with the judge. The judge would have been able to decide the case without the jury had they. It was a self-defense case, which the jury said they believed. Last point, Ford.
You know, I do think we need to look at self-defense and stand your ground laws, but that said, stand your ground, at least in the state of Florida, it seems that African Americans have a greater success rate at it than white Americans. But at the end of the day, we should look at all the laws of all the jurisdictions to make sure that the legal fairness is in play.
All right, legal fairness, and we should all treat each other fairly. That coming out of that talk, I think, is
Do I get a response to that?
Not today. Got to go. But I appreciate your insight. I think we understand where you stand on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, guys, take care.